What's going on, guys? My name is Terminus, and today we are gonna react to episode 10 of Frieren. This is gonna be an interesting one because I actually recorded the episode like yesterday, but apparently OBS didn't record the audio of my mic for some reason. Now I always have a backup, so I have to kind of like merge it together, but that might be the reason why it's kind of weird in the beginning. Anyway, I think we should get right into it. I'm just gonna pop over to the recording and we're gonna just go straight into the comment spotlight. So let's fucking go. And I personally do think that I should include you guys a little bit more. There's not a lot of you. Like, there's one or two commenters which are very prevalent in the comments of Frieren so far. One of which seems to be very psychology interested and also a big fan of the Frieren, the Frieren series in general. So that is very exciting for me to see. But yeah, let's just make a comment spotlight. This is going to be our first one. Let's bam, get the comments on the screen over here. And we're just gonna go through them a little bit and yeah, talk about it a little bit. We do have MX here who is saying there's some obvious flaws to the video. We have seen that in episode 1. Those are the comments of episode 1. Yeah, there's been some flaws. Virtual backgrounds, lighting, tone, cutting, whatever. I'm kind of just figuring out everything, and I'm having fun trying to do my stuff. Well, not as much fun. Just as we speak this morning, I've had like 4 videos which got flagged for copyright, and I had to. The older ones I had to just cut out the segments, and the newer ones I kind of just re-edited and re-rendered, and I'm looking if I can get them up as like re-uploads to kind of keep the integrity, because YouTube's editor trimming tool is kind of shitty. But yeah, let's talk about Frieren actually. Let's talk about Frieren. Vincent Lallyman, I think it is, talks about how refreshing he does think it is to have a reactor who doesn't immediately judge Frieren or tries to build a theory, but just starts to listen. I'm very thankful that you see it that way. I do try to keep my immediate opinions kind of separated from my later analysis, because first impressions are obviously very important, but they can sometimes confuse us or get us onto the wrong path, and then we kind of climb our way onto a theory, and the theory doesn't turn out the way like the actual intent of the author or the series is gonna go, and then we hold on to it. You know, that's a human thing to do, right? We try to like confirmation bias. We're trying to fit the information that's coming into our personal theories and what we think is going on, and that isn't always the case. So sometimes we hold on to something wrong, or something maybe kind of from the wrong perspective, right? And try to justify it retroactively through the information that's coming in, while ignoring all the other information. So I'm trying to avoid that. Obviously, it's not perfect. I've become a little bit I've become a little bit guilty of that myself later on when I'm doing the analysis on the demons, but I think it's also the wish I do have that the demons represent something else in the story. Maybe I just have to reset my mind on that and see it as what it's supposed to be, which is kind of a narrative device, but we're getting into that later. It is very important for a therapist, for a psychologist to take in all the information first and then make your analysis, because obviously there's no guarantee that what's coming in at first is going to be the most relevant stuff, or that the thing that comes to your mind first when you hear a certain set of symptoms or whatever is going to be in the end what these symptoms actually represent. If we do think about clinical psychology, for example, we do have this differentiation between symptoms, syndromes, and actual diagnoses. The symptoms are basically what the person is experiencing and what they're most likely to describe when they come to you and ask for your help. Those symptoms can be kind of combined into a syndrome, right? You have multiple symptoms, and if you take them together, there's a syndrome, like a set of symptoms that belongs to a certain kind of category. Oftentimes they are congruent with one another, or kind of go into a certain category of symptoms that you might encounter in certain situations. But even then, you can't just say, like, if you have a patient, for example, who has visual hallucinations and maybe auditory hallucinations, and they are behaving rather paranoid, it might be an easy thought to be like, okay, this guy or this woman definitely has paranoid schizophrenia, but that's not the case. Oftentimes you do encounter people like who have taken drugs, for example, either for a long period of time or just for the first time right now, and have been experiencing these symptoms. Thanks to that, there's brain tumors, there's strokes, and the damage resulting from it that can kind of also cause hallucinations, depending on which part of the brain is damaged in which way, right? There can be neurochemical imbalances, there can be sicknesses which are maybe not directly connected to the brain but affect the brain, and then, right, we do have these things, and it's very easy to go for a diagnosis right away. But oftentimes you do have patients coming in that get a certain preemptive diagnosis based on what symptoms and what tests are being run first, like an MRI or whatever, and you're looking, yeah, okay, it's not a brain tumor, it's not this, it's not that, but and you guess it's whatever. Somebody comes in with symptoms of a depression, and you're like, okay, I've checked this, I've checked that, okay, this patient most likely does have some kind of depressive disorder, some kind of depression, be it a major depression or something a little bit less severe. And then you start treating them, and maybe in the process of trying to avoid them, trying to have specific thoughts. I'm purposefully not saying this in the beginning of the video, because I do know that you kind of likes to flag this kind of stuff, but you know which thoughts I'm talking about in in combination with depression. And I'm trying to give them, or the doctor, because obviously psychologists, especially here in Europe, are not allowed to give medication themselves. That's doctors that went and studied medicine and then went into the field of psychiatry that are giving medications. But you're giving them something that is supposed to improve their mood, and suddenly they swing into mania, and you have to find out, is this just depression or is it actually bipolar disorder, right? Were there any signs, or are there any signs that this is a thing that's happening in phases for the patient, and especially for a first diagnosis, it's often hard to differentiate the two depending on which phase the patient is in. So yeah, there's a lot of additional information coming in the end that we do have to measure to see, is it really the thing that pops in my head the first instance I hear about it. And in this regard, it's very important also to, if we analyze other people, or if we have just met a new person and we're trying to get a first impression of them, to kind of keep back our thoughts and analysis, or inner analysis. Obviously, you're not analyzing every person you meet on a conscious level. You do it subconsciously, but I think it's important to be aware of that. Both as a therapist, as a psychologist that's working in psychology in general, even in, I don't know, work in organizational psychology, which is absolutely not my thing, by the way, but even there, you shouldn't judge an applicant to a company that you have to potentially sort out immediately just based on the first impression you get, but you need to remain reserved and neutral and start to form your ideas and impression after you've done the most essential basics of testing, and then just go further into the investigative testing to see what exactly if they are if they could do the job, if they're a good candidate or not. But yeah, in all walks of life, even as our personal, like, if you're just meeting new people, it's very important to not be too quick to judge and too quick to categorize something that might not be the way you initially thought it is. And yeah, that's a very, very good point. And I think reactions are often just, what do I think initially? And people do often like to jump then from the reaction to the after discussion or analysis and just be like, okay, this is what I thought initially, let's just continue that thought and talk about it. But I'm trying to keep my mind open on that, especially if we come to some of the comments that Vincent is a very active commenter that he dropped later, where he kind of has a completely different perspective on what Frieren feels on the inside, right? From my initial impression, from the initial impression of apparently a lot of other Let's Players. But yeah. Alright, episode 2. Shout out to my girlfriend, says 𝐏𝐢𝐏𝐿. Alright. Moving on. Episode 4. Vincent says, alright, let me see here. As a form of Psy, a little reminder, taking notes, observing. That's a very interesting point as well. A lot of reactors do that, right? Taking their notes and whatever, and oftentimes they cut it out of the reaction, which is a valid thing to do. That should be done, definitely, because people are just sitting there and being like, okay, you're gonna be finished writing that down, or. But it's also important if you're going into psychology itself, right? This idea of taking notes. If you're taking notes, oftentimes you have to take notes because you can't keep your thoughts together, and sometimes there's certain trains of thought that are starting, and since on the inside we're generally often thinking pretty quickly, rather more quickly than we can write or read or say something, it's often important to keep those thoughts, but you have to kind of develop some methods to memorizing those things just based on a single word or 2 words, because you won't have more time to write down a more specific kind of sentence if you're talking to someone else or if you're trying to entertain someone like on YouTube. And that also goes for therapy, of course, right? You're having a therapy session and your patient is talking to you and they're talking about their stuff and you're just sitting there being like, yeah, interesting. All right, you said that. All right, interesting. Okay, let me just write that down. First of all, it wastes a lot of time, obviously, to write that down, right? If it's important, you should write something down. But do you see what I'm doing here? I mean, I don't know if it's perfectly visible in the camera, but you're creating a barrier between you and your patient. It's the same if you're talking to someone or if you're holding a presentation in front of people. You're just standing there with the notes that you've taken down. Yeah, it's important that you can have a somewhat fluid presentation, but I think it's more important to have that close connection. Put it to the side, put it here, write down 2 or 3 words, write them down quickly. They just need to be barely readable, okay? That is the important thing. I think that might actually be one of the reasons why doctors are sometimes so illegible in what they're writing, because they need to be quick to be writing that shit down. I mean, obviously, if they're writing something on a piece of paper after the session, there's no, like, excuse for it. It's just a handwriting, and it's not a terrible thing as long as they can read it themselves. But my point is, you're creating a barrier between you and the patient, and that is a thing that prevents you from forming a more intimate connection with them, right? From forming a relationship of trust and giving them the feeling that you're actually listening to them, that you're not just writing down the check marks but that you're actually engaged in their story and that you're paying attention to them as a human being. And that is a very, very important thing, because if this relationship of trust isn't here, if the patient doesn't think that therapy is gonna be successful, or that the therapist is actually listening to them, then there is the issue that a lot of patients will just stop the therapy or look for a different therapist, right? The motivation to go into therapy is mainly based on your expectation of what you get out of it, your motivation to actually change something about your life that is bothering you in life, right? Or that's hindering you in a big way or stressing you out. And actually how convinced you are if the therapist is actually listening to you, if they're effective, and if they're a person that you can personally connect to. And a lot of that is also just having that visual connection that is interrupted if I just write stuff down on my paper right in front of me. And obviously I'm missing important details as well. Multitasking is not a thing that's easy for human beings. Human beings are not made to multitask. I mean, we can to a degree, but it's very limited, and oftentimes we do have to do a lot of work to shift our attention constantly, right? There's a thing in psychology that is, I don't know how it's called in English, let me think about it. I think it should be called split attention. If I'm reading it in a paper, I can immediately identify it, but I don't know the exact words, obviously, since I'm studying psychology in my native language. But I think it's split attention just, right? It's split attention, and split attention means you're paying attention to 2 or 3 different things at the same time. This is very important for driving your car, for example, for general traffic psychology, right? To make sure that people who might have had a stroke or people who might be in some way disadvantaged can still pay enough attention to actually not be a danger to themselves and others in traffic. So oftentimes you do have these tests in rehabilitation facilities for strokes and other similar stuff, where you do have the license to test these people on their reaction times, on their ability to pay attention to multiple things at the same time, making stress tests. So you are aware that, because sometimes if we have deficits, they might be not noticeable in your everyday life, but once you are very stressed and there's a lot of sensory overload coming in, those deficits start to show up again suddenly. For example, for like a visual neglect. The visual neglect is basically you can see with both of your eyes and can see everything, right? But the problem is that there is certain points within your visual field that your how do I explain this in a way that that it makes sense to everybody? That your attention cannot, or is that your attention system basically ignores most of the time. And you can learn to compensate that, right? A lot of conscious compensation is necessary for that, and after a while, if you train and whatever, it might also start to regenerate, because depending on the damage you had and the issues you, like the causes of the issues and how much you recover from that. But obviously, the more stressed you are, the more sensory information is coming in, the less you will be able to consciously try to outbalance that and compensate for it. And so stress tests are very important to find out, is the person capable to still, under stress and under a lot of sensory overload, be able to fulfill their general duties and drive securely in this case, in the case of traffic. It's very interesting and very important aspect of psychology, since everybody needs to be to a degree mobile, right? That is a big part of our modern life, that we can just drive to the supermarket, or right, I have to go shopping, I have to get to work. Obviously there's the train and whatever, but it's not always it does not always work all that well, and especially in the countryside you won't have that many train lines. I know in the US the train system is a lot worse than it is in Europe, and even in Europe here, if you live in rural areas, you better have a car, because otherwise you're kind of fucked. And yeah, very, very good comment. Pay attention, don't write down too much which is important. First of all, it's not very engaging. Second of all, it's very important to keep up that attention, and keep listening to people, to not miss information, critical information as well. And also, it is very important for the establishment of the connection, of actually staying connected to the person you're talking to. Yeah, we talked a little bit about, Vincent said he actually studied psychology, clinical psychology and psychotherapy in France, and then decided on a completely different path in life, which is very interesting for me. Like, these people who are at some point changing their point of view on life and deciding to live more in the moment and less with like long-term career goals or whatever, but just live. And that is also an art in and of itself, in my opinion, to just stay afloat and manage to stay afloat, right? And live your life on a daily basis and enjoy that. And I do think that is what Frieren is kind of doing on a long-term perspective. She does have a lot more time on her hands, and I do think a lot of us humans are the reason why we rush so many things and why there's so much time pressure behind everything, aside from capitalism and and this overfocus on productiveness, which is obviously a really big problem in industrial countries. For example, also in Japan, where people are literally working themselves to death in some areas and in some branches. But this is also a product of our time, right? We do have so much information available, so many choices, so many things we could learn, so many things we could do, we could achieve. And a lot of us want to achieve a lot of these things, right? We want to engross ourselves, but a lot of these things require years to actually fulfill it. For example, my university path was very, very stagnant in a lot of ways. I started studying pretty late. And I studied a couple of years, not always full time, and then I would basically, something in the system got changed, and now I have to do a couple of additional subjects to actually be able to become a therapist if I want to, and that's gonna delay me even more. And not to speak of the fact that if you want to become a therapist, technically it's the 3 years of the bachelor's degree, the 2 years of the master's degree, that's 5 years already, and then you have 5 additional years of practical years that you have to spend in psychiatric and general health institutions where you do practice psychotherapy under supervision, and have to have a certain number of hours and cases and clients and whatever, and write your reports. And then, only then, right, after a good 10, 11 years, whatever, right, however long it's going to take you, you're going to be able to call yourself an actual therapist. It's almost like a doctor at this point. It did, like a short while ago, it didn't used to be that way, but even then it was long enough. You had your 5 years of studying, and like more than 50% of people in Germany, like students in Germany, take longer than the normal time to study, which means oftentimes you lose 1 or 2 semesters in the bachelor's degree, and you lose 1 or 2 semesters in the master's degree. So you do end up with 6-7 years of studying, and an additional 3 years of back in the day, that, or a couple of years ago, that was the case. You did an additional 3 years of psychotherapy traineeship, basically, with little to no payment. So you also had 10-11 years of psychotherapy, and there's paths that go a similar or the same way, with more or less theoretical and practical parts, and more or less academic requirements, but there's a lot, like, that's a lot of your life, right? 10 years of your life. That's if you, let's say you're getting relatively old, and you'll live until you're 100 years old, right? That is 1/10 of your life. If you're 80, it's 1/8 of your life. It's a lot. That is a lot of time for us human beings. I think the average person in Europe-ish, Japan as well, right? Industrial countries, except for America, lives around 80 to 82 years. Which means there's a decent amount which are above that, but there's also a decent amount which are below that, depending on how healthy you are, what other conditions you have, genetics, environment, right? Poverty or being rich, right? Being rich can help. But also drugs, exploits, they don't help. It's the opposite. America, I think it's like in the 70s, 75 or something. So think about that, America. I think that's the nutrition and the healthy environment that you live in partially, right? Maybe the guns too. But yeah, it's very interesting. We try to achieve, I mean, it was a tangent, but my point is we try to achieve so many things over the course of our lives that sometimes we just, we're just having all that pressure on us, right? You need to make a decision here, you need to make a decision there. Back in the day you had less options, but I do think you had more time to kind of ruminate on them, to find out who you really are within these options. Obviously, if you were a person that couldn't find themselves in any of these, that had to be tough. It had to be really tough, especially if you're looking 20 years into the future, and if you had grown up there, maybe you would have found something that you absolutely loved and could do really well. But in the end, I do think every generation, every time period has its own problems. For us, it's often we seem to be very much in a hurry these days, and that is partially, I think, because we have so much choice, we have so much content, right? You could watch years, you could spend years watching the content on YouTube, and it would never run out because people are producing it constantly, right? Now, obviously, at some point, you've probably seen it all, not seen it all, but seen a lot of content, and you're like, okay, I'm bored at this point, I want to do something else. But yeah, I think that is a part of why we're in such a hurry, that there's so much we want to theoretically find out and achieve, and we do have our curiosity, we do have our needs, we do have our desires and passions, and we can't always pick all of them, and that is something that is very hard on some of us, just to give up on certain things and prioritize other things. Again, that was a tangent. We are on the episode 4 discussion, but let's move on to the discussion of episode 5. Frieren always helping the locals, which I think is very interesting for me. This is where me and Vincent disagree on the general on what Frieren is, who Frieren is as a character, right? Yeah, so, sorry, I had to cut a little bit, but anyway, Vincent says that he thinks that Frieren is actually very emotional and very empathetic, but does oftentimes not care to explain it to other people who are making different assumptions about her. In case of Fern, who... Yeah, I do agree. Fern is a generally rather judgmental kind of person, and Frieren doesn't seem to want to correct the assumption that Fern has, that Frieren does not care or doesn't want to do these things, right? So she's trying to find a way to make it believable to Fern as to why she would be doing these things or helping these things. I do kind of disagree there. I do still think Frieren had some kind of emotional emotional stuntedness in a way. I wouldn't call it stuntedness because it is normal for her species. I would call it just not being used to as much emotionality as a human, but actually growing into it because she spends more time with humans than with her own species. We did hear that later on, that Frieren hasn't seen one of her species in hundreds of years. So that is kind of my theory going forward. Vincent does hold the theory that Frieren actually also knew about the dragon and the book he was holding, so she had all of that kind of in mind when she went through it, and that it's not that she doesn't want to help, she's just trying to she she feels bothered by having to explain herself to people. And I do think, in a way, that is kind of like also a social stuntedness. But I do believe that I kind of disagree a little bit. I do think that Frieren, when 𝐏𝐬𝐏 died at least didn't have as much emotional range and understanding as she does have at this point in the story. But we do see, definitely, even with the jailbreak later, where we do talk about it as well, that that Frieren wanted to flee, but obviously she wanted to flee. That makes sense, because this is the first thing she would think about when she is in prison. She's like, I gotta get out of here. But also, she often, I wonder why that is and why the author put it that way. She does often seem to phrase things in a very short and vague manner, as to almost deceive us as an audience and deceive Fern and Stark as her companions as to what her actual motivations are and what she wants to do going forward. Because we do see that after she breaks out of jail in episode 7, in episode 8 she actually does want to go after Aura, and the reason why she's fleeing out of town is that she thinks she can trust Stark and Fern with defending the town while she is taking on the big guys, or girls in this case, and destroying the army outside, so it can't happen in the first place. So she does trust her companions to do the right thing, and she also trusts them to be strong enough to do the right thing, and she actually herself has a motivation to do the right thing. But I do wonder why we are always getting exposed to, first of all, so little and so vague information, because these moments when she's like, well, I better think about getting the hell out of here, she's not saying that to anyone inside the cell. There's nobody, well, I mean, there might be people in the cells, but she's not saying that to anybody who is present in the room. So she's saying it to the audience or to herself. Now, obviously, this is a thing that is also very common in psychology. We do have to consider that if you're talking to yourself, you need a lot less words, because most of these words that you're saying are just to reconfirm what you're doing. And the actual thought behind the word, it's inside your head, right? You already know what you're thinking and why you're doing it, and over-explaining it wouldn't make sense from a perspective of just talking to yourself and organizing your thoughts. You're thinking this through, and then you say a short sentence, but behind that short sentence there's a lot of weight, there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of other things that are unspoken that you don't have to tell yourself, because, right, that is the thing you have to keep in mind when you're talking to another person, which is give me a second, I actually do have to look that up, because the word eludes me. Well, I didn't find it now, but maybe Vincent can remind me. It's the principle that when talking to someone else, you do not necessarily always have the knowledge base, the same knowledge base that the other person has. And I do feel, Vincent also mentioned this later, that this anime plays a lot with that, right? It plays a lot with exposing certain thoughts and thoughts of people, and people talking to themselves, to the audience, that don't necessarily give you all the information, because it kind of can get you thinking. And once your expectations are actually met or they're betrayed, you start thinking, why is that? And it kind of gets you ruminating on why you misjudged the situation. I mean, obviously, if your expectations are met, you kind of make that link, and that is another part in your cognitive schemes, right? In your cognitive representations of how situations work, how certain things work and concepts work. Speaking of themes, we had that as well. Let me look that up. When we are talking about, I'm jumping to episode 7 here just because it's a good transition. When we are talking about demons, Vincent actually sees the demons, wants to among the psychologists of us, it says that to demons, humans seem to be like black boxes in the Skinner sense. If you do read up Skinner, Skinner was actually a very important psychologist that laid the foundation of behavioral psychology in the sense of behavioral psychology research. You probably have learned about Skinner boxes in school. Like training animal behavior on different levels, and cognitive associations, and reward structures and whatnot. But Skinner black boxes are most easily explained, I think, by just saying that this school of psychology does not look at the inner thoughts and inner emotions of a certain individual, be that a person or be it an animal, because there's been a lot of like animal experiments in that regard, that you try to, I don't know, train doves to do specific to make specific do specific actions and reward them based on the partial movements they make up to the point where they do the specific thing you want them to do, right? For example, trying to train a dove to go a certain amount of steps, then rotate 180 and come back or something. And that actually works if from a long-term perspective, if you do it really well, because holy shit, that must take so much time and patience, and it must be really hard. But yeah, it works. So this school of psychology actually doesn't look at the inner thoughts or go like the inner workings of somebody, but yeah, this school of psychology doesn't look at the inner workings of people or how their emotions work, how they cognitively work or understand things, but they look more at what stimuli come in, right? What stimuli meets the human being or the individual in this case, and what response is coming out of that, right? So we do have certain words in the case of the demons here. Demons use certain words, like the child was using this cry for help, this mommy, I'm hurt. And at some point they realized that by saying this, humans would refrain from killing them, which is an evolutionary step, of course, and then socially taught from generation to generation, as we have discussed, to the point where demons just know that this is the usual response that humans have to that specific word. I find it very interesting to look at something this complex. I think it doesn't work on the grand narrative scheme because, in my opinion, and I have to kind of disagree with Vincent there, demons have to at least understand, right? I do agree that they don't empathize, that they cannot, that their brain is not necessarily like humans or like any animals, and that they might not be able to comprehend how human emotions actually work. But they do know what certain words trigger in humans, what responses are triggered. I do still think it's very, very hard to conceptualize and kind of imagine that a million words that come out of the mouth of a demon over the course of thousands of years have developed to a point where they can actually converse with humans with a common knowledge base and a common knowledge structure without actually having the concepts in mind. I don't think that works, right? They need to understand the concepts at some point. Maybe they don't represent them the same way in their own brain, in their own thinking structure, but I do think that there must at least be some understanding of what the word father, for example, means, and that is what confused me in episode 6, I think it was, where Lord Lugner was like, responded to the question, what is a father, and he was like, who knows? I think it's very vaguely expressed, and I do think it's badly done because it could throw you on the wrong path of thinking, that these demons don't understand the concepts of what they're saying at all. Of course, it's possible that this is the case, right? Just automated responses like an AI reproducing, right? certain names and not actually having a brain to understand these concepts, but I do think it's more along the line of, yes, they understand the concepts because they need to talk about things, right? What is a shield? What is a tree? What is life? Right, the definitions need to be understood, but at the same time, obviously, there's no empathy, and I agree on that. There's no empathy aside from maybe some emotions that they could over time identify as being similar from because we do see that demons, to a degree at least, have emotions like anger and frustration and whatever. They do feel those, and they seem to be, at least to a degree, comparable to us humans. But yeah, Vincent is convinced that the demons kind of represent in the story more or less a warning of going too far with our empathy and using assimilation to our detriment. Assimilation, if people don't know it, assimilation is part of Piaget's theories. Piaget was a very important developmental psychologist. He also was present in learning psychology. So assimilation is actually a concept of learning psychology, where you are meeting a new stimuli or a new situation, a new concept, and you are applying old conceptual information onto it, right? The thing that we described a couple of episodes ago, where I was like, okay, if you meet a completely new situation, if you didn't have these concepts and schemas of how things work, and if you couldn't apply your own experiences of, for example, to name a very, very basic thing that might not be important in our daily situation, but if you couldn't apply what a chair is, not just based on the exact look of all the chairs you've seen, but just based on the general characteristics the chair has, and then apply that to a new chair you see that kind of looks strange to you, but is still would fall into the category of chair, then every time you meet a complete or a very new stimuli, even if it's based, right, if it belongs to the same category of something you've met before, you couldn't do anything with it, right? So it's very important for us humans to be able to save like prototypes of certain categories of objects or people or situations that we have encountered, and apply them to new situations or objects or subjects that we do encounter. But at the same time, demons, at least in this story, according to Vincent, seem to be kind of a warning to go too far with that, right? Assimilation means I do take an old concept that I've learned and apply it to a new thing, right? I do see a demon, and I apply the logic. I see it talking, I see it interacting, I see it gesturing, right? I see it smiling and having a general human looking form, and I do assume that they're thinking like humans, that the brain is the same as the humans, that their emotions are the same as the humans, or at least capable to be the same as the humans, right? And I do judge them on the basis of them being some kind of humanoid creature, which might be the wrong thing to do here. I find it very interesting that we do have these conflicting themes, right? On the one hand, just the general theme that we have learned with Frieren, that being empathetic and paying a lot of attention to your friends and spending time with them is a very important thing, although we are still split on when Frieren actually picked that up, if she was like that from the beginning or not, but more on that in a second. And then we have the opposite theme, which is you can't have empathy with everything and everyone, which to a degree I do agree, I do understand that. Obviously, if you have a serial killer, it's very important, or a mass murder, whatever, right? It's very important to understand why they work the way they work, to understand how to maybe prevent people from getting to that point, and also to understand if there's a way to rehabilitate them in a way. But also, this doesn't change in any way the decision we have to take, such as taking them into custody, because they're a danger to themselves and others, or how we have to judge them based on the legal system and how to interact with them in society. And right, I mean, obviously empathy is very important and it should always play a role, and we should always try to understand how things work, because then we can figure out better how to prevent negative things, how to strive towards positive things. But it's also important to not be too naive, I might say, right? Too empathetic and be like, oh, look at this poor thing, and then suddenly you ignored all the warning signs. And it might have been better to approach this with a little bit more of emotional distance. Even if you're not being harsh and cruel and whatever and combative right away, you should at least maybe be a little bit more careful about what you expose yourself to. And that is true, right? That is true in many categories of life, and we do need to learn that, and that is a very good theory going along with that. I do also see the reference to how is it called? To Games People Play by Eric. Eric Berne. I will look that up, actually. Interesting that Eric Berne seems to be a psychologist or a therapist that came out of school of psychoanalysis, and then developed his own system about like how transactional relationships between humans work, and tried to kind of develop his own kind of therapy based on that. And apparently he describes in his book that people have this kind of interacting with with repeating phrases and kind of exchanges that are going on. And I can definitely see, without having read anything of Berne's, I can definitely see how this would be functional in a social relationship, that you do have good friends or relatives or whatever that you speak to on a regular basis, and you do have these phrases that you're throwing back and forth, right? Himmel saying something that alludes to something more deep, and then the last minute he's like referring to his oh so nice looks and whatever, and Frieren then rejects that and turns around and is like, whatever, you're doing your usual thing, and then Himmel actually uses that gap to reveal something very important to him, something he wants to convey. I do think that this can be very functional, because this is also a method of, in my opinion, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but pinging people. So you're basically having your usual interaction, and the interesting thing is that if that usual interaction is different from usual, you might realize that there's something wrong, right? You do have that, on the one hand, you do have that, hey, Hyder says some weird statement, and then it's coming back like, you corrupt priest. But if there's something that's going on right now with one of the two parties, right, and one of the parties initiated the exchange and the other party is not reacting emotionally or expressively or even articulating it in the same way, you can kind of sense that something might be wrong in the current situation, and you need to investigate further. There's also this aspect of Frieren at this point might already expect Himmel to say something profound after something like this, right? She's walking away, but she's not actually walking very fast or whatever, and she's still listening because she knows something is coming after that, and that this is something that might be important. Because on this we can definitely agree on. I do think that that Frieren has picked up very early on human customs and human emotions, and was emotionally very attached to her party and to Himmel. And I do agree that what you're saying later in episode 8 here, that no, yeah, as you do say later on, there's this whole thing about Frieren actually suggested first that they meet again in 50 years for the meteor shower. So there is some kind of emotional connection, and her enjoying seeing her people again. And you also described how she smiled throughout the whole journey when they were traveling to the spot that she wanted to show them for the meteor shower. So there's definitely some thought going into being there for your friends, but I do just think conceptually it was very different for Frieren, right? Not only that she did not conceptually see the time span as that big of a deal, despite being aware that humans are aging faster than them, but also that maybe based on just her own emotionality and the form of interactions that she is used to from her childhood, possibly, when she was probably still together with her parents, elven parents, whatever, that meeting every 50 years might be more appropriate to elves, or meeting every after having done long voyages and done like long distance stuff, might be more of a common thing in elven culture than just a meeting every day or every month, or right, on the regular. And people, apparently reactors, seem to have judged Frieren as very cold, but I don't think I don't think that's necessarily the case. I do just think that they have rightfully seen that there's some disconnect in the perspective of both of them. Right? I mean, obviously they do emphasize with Himmel, who is experiencing this as cold, but even Himmel knows that this is not how Frieren means it, but rather that this is kind of Frieren's way of interacting with people. Although I feel like Himmel should have tried to change that more and be a little bit more proactive. I do think if there's one regret in Himmel's life, it might have been that he hasn't been maybe initiating himself, right? He knew Frieren was going on a journey too, right? And he's the hero, right? He could have been going on a journey as well. He could have been like, okay, I'll go with you, or hey, let's meet up in 5 years again, right? I'll travel with you a little bit. And Frieren might have not rejected that. So I do think there's a lot of missed opportunities on Himmel's part as well, and I'm very, very curious how this is going to turn out when we get into Aureole and the whole discussion. I don't know if this is going to be the pinnacle end of the story, or if this is going to be somewhere in the middle, and then we're left with more to say, more to feel, more to ruminate on afterwards. So this is going to be a very interesting aspect of how this is going to turn out. Let me see if I've missed anything, actually. Yeah, demons are not evil because they're evil, right? I didn't suggest that. I said, like, I don't like that in stories in general, and I would be very disappointed if that's the case. I do think that I expressed it in some way in the videos, but I didn't mean it like that. I think it's just very easy to miss these specific aspects as we, as psychologists, or as people who are more attuned to narrative, can maybe pick up on, which is like the specific, very interesting thought of demons actually just being a predator and doing all the things to catch their prey, and not wanting to know what human society is like, right? They don't seem to have that curiosity for humans or that desire to make peace with other species. And I do believe that there's certainly some aggressive animal species out there who you could compare that to, although a lot of animals, if not, a lot of animals, not all of them, but a lot of animals do have that sense of community within their own species, and sometimes even coexist with other species. Even predators coexist with other species that are useful to them. So in that regard, I kind of disagree. I do think that demons, with as many as they are, right? Not that many. They don't reproduce as much as humans. And as powerful as humans are in comparison to them, yeah, they're normal human is puny in comparison to most of the demons, but you have to realize that first of all, demons are a lot less people, and second of all, humans have conquered a big deal of the world. That is a theme in most fantasy stories, if you think about it, and it kind of reflects our reality, right? Animals exist in different climates and different regions, but humans are all the way across the globe because of the unique abilities and capabilities that we have, that technology and other things unlocked, right? Opposable thumbs and our special nutrition, our specific nutrition, that in the end then led to more development of our of our frontal, of our cortex, in a way, our neocortex, which is bigger than in most other animals. So I do think that in this specific regard, even if we do see demons as nothing else than predators, and demons see humans as nothing else than prey to manipulate, I do believe that they're making a big mistake in underestimating how powerful humans are in comparison to them, and how beneficial it would be to them to live in at least relative peace with them. to have kind of just hunting other things, because as far as I know, demons are not reliant on drinking human blood like vampires are in fantasy stories, or like or gorging themselves on human flesh. I mean, yes, they engage in very cruel acts and enjoy them. So also the question, why is that the case? Because if they were just simple predators who whose only instinct is to eat humans, well, in that case I would actually say it doesn't make that much sense. I mean, they're predators, right? If we know cats like to play with their food, but there is some parts of that in there that go beyond just I want to eat humans, right? And it would be very interesting if the story went more into details about that. Now, obviously, that wouldn't humanize the demons. And that could be a very problematic thing for the narrative, because people are only engaged and interested if we can kind of find ourselves in these people. Even if you have big villains, right? They often have idealistic goals. They have very specific characteristics, right? Or they have certain proclivities that we humans, some of us humans, can put ourselves into and can kind of follow along. If we do have a species that is very different from what a human or an animal in general, like a mammal, would be, then this is a grass contrast and certainly something interesting to explore, but I don't know how engaging it would be to do that for a big part of the story. So I do think in that regard, demons are plot devices for what we have established here with saying, right, warning that you sometimes empathy can go into naive territories, and we shouldn't let that happen, and also to kind of just be an opposing force and be an interesting thought concept of some species that is so crassly different from us humans that it's very difficult to understand them even if they speak our language. So that is an interesting point to talk about for people like us, but it's also maybe not as engaging a story as human-to-human conflict and different motivations that can be kind of understood by people. By people, if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think we did talk a whole fucking lot about this. I'm actually gonna mark down the section here. I'm gonna be like, okay, common spotlight is from there to there. It's basically just Vincent this time, but honestly, guys, I'm not asking for like what we've discussed here, right? Like very intricate, this psychological theory and this narrative aspect and whatever, right? And analyzing and trying to prove something or being very, very intellectual about it. You can just write your opinion on it. What did you like? What didn't you like, right? What did you want to point out about a certain episode? What touched you personally on a personal level, right? We can talk about this emotionally as well. We don't need to just go into psychology. We can go into narrative, we can go into animation, we can go into why a certain shot is really badass, or why certain characters really, why we really empathize with certain characters. That is a thing that I would very much welcome. So if you want to be part of the comment spotlights, I'm probably going to do them every 5-6 episodes or something like that, because at the moment I don't have a lot of comments, but I'm going to do them. And if you want to be in there next time, yeah, do let me know. Yeah, other than that, we are going to go and get to the reaction. Episode 10. We're starting somewhere else, aren't we? Is that a flashback? Oh, yes. Flamm and Frieren.
フリーレン、バザルトの最後の言葉は覚えてるか？あいつらは言葉で人間をたぶらかすんだよ。そうだ。奴らは言葉を話すだけの魔物に過ぎない。奴らは卑怯だ。ならば私たちはそれ以上の卑怯者になればいい。
Fighting fire with fire.
しにできるのなら、私は喜んでその汚名を着よう。
So she has a mission to defeat the demons. And intro time. So Flum was actually very focused on eliminating the demons. Interesting. Cannot not jam out to this. Yeah. Find it very interesting how Frieren is really in these lyrics here focused on trying to understand why she feels the emotion she does, although she did feel it before Himmel died. So she didn't just suddenly develop them. He isn't dead. Wow, okay. Will she now? Yeah, Frieren is clever enough to not go in if she can't beat somebody. Wait, did Frieren and... Oh, okay, so they are similar in that matter. Yeah, of course. That was the connection point. And then we go back to Flum to exterminate the demons. I will take this dishonor gladly. Interesting, interesting. Oh, we do have direct conflict between elves and demons, possibly? Interesting. Are they their natural predators? But it would be kind of strange, wouldn't it, if you think about the fact that elves are less emotional. But then again, if you think about it, the demons could have very well also learned to manipulate elves in a way. Oh, this is how she met? And this is the flashback we saw, the short flash we saw when she thought about last time she saw elves. And she saw that with the powerful mage. I do really love the soundtrack. It's such a shame I can't include it, but I mean, it makes sense. Frieren having, Flum having the philosophy of stock. Interesting. Parallels. Again, pride. Interesting. Do the demons have something specifically against elves? Ooh. Okay, so the Demon King has a personal grudge against elves. Why? I wonder. Are they a threat? Yeah, as an expert in the field, you do know the confidence, of course. But you are self-aware, so... Wow. And with the snap of a finger. Don't judge a book by its cover. Taking a page out of the Demon Handbook. Yeah, of course. I mean, like knights and magic users, they seem to have a lot of pride and be honorable, at least on the surface, but she uses that to her advantage. I like that. Adapt, improvise, overcome. And we're establishing the relationship, right? There is hate at the root, yeah. I mean... She already has the control, like... Okay, it's an elven trait. And this is the crux of the story, right? We are at the showdown. And the overconfidence. And she thinks she's tired herself out. Frieren knew that going in. And that is her weakness, because she's so confident in it. But it's interesting, we are making all of these assumptions based on the fact that we think that demons think like us a little bit, right? At least some aspects of us. But you know, if you have all your cards on the table, how do you know that, though? Intimidation. Rank. Yeah, the strongest, right? Might makes right, exactly. And as such, they wouldn't train it, right? And they're not used to it as such. Holy shit, these are some beautiful shots. Also, imagine how long it... Holy shit, she's so... I mean, that also proves that obviously Frieren wasn't surprised by her human companion's aging. She was just taken aback, that's all. There's a difference between expecting something and then actually experiencing it. Oh, you wish that would be a different reason, maybe, as well. It's not a definite no. Oh, and this is where she got the practice from planting flowers around the grave, right? That's when she first encountered it. And this is where she got the spell from, of course. Ah, holy shit. Okay, so we do see, right, her empathy, her emotion, her connections. As early as this, they were already here. And her interest in learning the spells that other people like, or learning the things and practices other people like. Something that she learned very early that has settled itself in her mind. I do wonder why Flum was so insistent on that. Maybe just for her to be not a known quantity and for the demons then be able to not assess her properly, underestimate her constantly. But you see that even now she keeps her cards closed when she encounters a foe. And she waits until they boast or come out with all of their hands on deck, and then she sees all the tricks they're able to play. But she has a lot in her back pocket and can just say, alright. And we're back to the heroes party. Interesting. And how they encountered Frieren, okay. What makes him able to identify it? This is so typical of him, honestly. I love how it turns silent. That is an artistic choice. But why does it not matter? Alright, surprise in 3, 2, 1. Alright, it's still gonna take some time, okay? We're gonna set the tension, alright. Oh, she's enjoying this. And I'm not talking about Aura. Ooh, the ballad shakes. And once again, I think we're gonna have an Aizen moment, Eins moment. She trained for a long time. But yes, I would assume they wouldn't survive long if they couldn't. Because her master is a genius. She has foresight. Denial. We are in denial. Oh, she's gonna flex. She's gonna flex. We have the OP moment. Alright. And I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't her full capacity. This has been a long... Holy shit, she is savage. Wow, what a shot. And that's it, episode 10. I mean, pretty straightforward, isn't it? Alright. Alright, since I'm gonna cut out these any OPs at this point, I'm gonna just start talking right away. Very, very, very cool. Yeah, I don't know, Basalt, that was the commander that apparently killed Frieren's village, which, wow, what a backstory. She was part of an elven village, and apparently the Demon King has something against the elves, right? That is something we definitely need to explore down the line, because there must be a reason for that. Methinks that it's probably, and maybe that actually has to do with the fact that there's not many elves to go around, not just that they don't procreate as much and don't have as much romance going on, but also maybe that the demons have seen them as a threat in the past, like thousands of years ago, when Flam lived, and have actually systematically tried to eradicate them, which makes perfect sense, right? There's a species that threatens you because they have a high mana capacity, they're very strong, right? They're good mages. Maybe they live very long, so they have a lot of experience as well. And you, as another species, as demons who also live hundreds of years, might see that as a threat and be like, okay, we need to take them out, otherwise they're gonna get in our way down the line. Especially when you're a power-hungry person or whatever, this is gonna be something that's really, really important. But yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna make a cut, but if it's a cut, it's gonna be a very, very short cut. Alright, yeah, let's talk about it. Frieren fucking sweet. Holy shit. Might makes right. That is what the demons adhere by, and that has been, well, what we humans did adhere by in the past, and still in some way do adhere by, right? Just the means to the might have changed, right? The means to the might these days, as Flum explained, social status, and yeah, let me just... I actually closed the episode. Very, very smart. Very smart, my friend. I'm not gonna let it run either, right? So, we're just gonna scroll through it. Yeah, the commander, which was Basalt. I wonder if his name's gonna come up later. I don't know. It might just be that we have a lot of prominent demon kings, demon lords that are named something. We also do have, obviously, right, 𝐏𝐬𝐩 the Sage, who hasn't come up so far. So there are name drops that can come up later down the line. Maybe this demon was a descendant of this one and whatever. Interesting also that they seem to adhere to human customs, that they put on armor like humans do. Obviously this can also be a deception tactic, but in a way it's also functional. Makes sense in war to wear armor even if you are very magically gifted and whatnot. I'm sure there are also demons that are very specialized in magic. The gorgeous shots, by the way, like such gorgeous shots. And you do see, I like how they did that in the art style. You can actually see that Frieren is younger than she is in the present. This is achieved not only by the dress, which does a lot to that as well, because it seems like a very childhood, young age kind of dress. I don't know why it feels that way, but definitely like maybe because it's rather simple and it doesn't have a lot of like ornaments and whatever. And also you can see it in her face and the way she mimics and whatnot. 𝐏𝐢𝐏 is dead, and Fern learned to suppress her mana right away, which makes sense if Flam, who found Frieren, has taught her that, then obviously Frieren would give it on to pass it on to Fern, who now can slay demons even independently from Frieren. Who knows, maybe one day Fern will go on her own way together with 𝐸𝐸 maybe, and Frieren will go on another journey of self-reflection or find somewhere to settle down maybe as well. She does love to do her research for years on end. I couldn't very well imagine that there's decades in between where Frieren is like, I want to study this, and you're going to be fine on your own. You follow your dreams, you do your thing. Yeah, but we do have the Frieren backstory. She got saved by, well, not got saved, she actually saved herself, right? But she got found by Flam, and Flam took her in and immediately demonstrated her might here as the demons were attacking her. One spell was enough to eliminate them all because they once again overestimated themselves. We talked about this in very, very much detail in episode 8 and 9, I think, that this seems to be one of the most prominent features of demons, one of the most prominent weaknesses of them, that they are overly that they are overly arrogant, right? Due to them having invested so much time in specializing in special kinds of magic and being a race that inherently is very magic, has a very strong magic affinity. And we see that turn out here as well, and Frieren observing very early on that this is the way to beat demons the best, and then being taught how to accomplish this goal on a grand scheme, because as we get explained later, like as we do find out later, there is actually some fluctuations in mana when somebody's just temporarily suppressing their mana every once in a while to trick people. But obviously if you're doing it constantly, at some point you're getting in this state. I'm thinking of I don't know, Demon Slayer, Total Concentration Breathing, or My Hero Academia with the how was it called? Full Cowling, I think. Yeah, that you're constantly in a state of having that physical condition. Then obviously you're gonna get used to it at some point, and it's gonna get easier to control even those fluctuations. We have that a lot with. To use some in real life examples, like people who do a lot of body weight exercises and are very very physically defined, right? They will have an easier time making very controlled movements and moving their bodies in a way that maybe a person who is able to push or pull or press double the weight they can press still can't do, because they don't have that core strength, they don't have those little small muscles integrated as well, because and even if they can do it, it's very shaky, and you can see that it costs them a lot of concentration, because it's not as easy to signal those muscles when you're not constantly doing that, when you're not used to constantly train all of these little small muscles in your life and have near perfect control of your position, of your body's position in the room. And if you're just training hard on other levels, right? And it's the same for very professional athletes and whatnot, that they have an insane control. If you look at the Olympics and watch Olympic jumpers or divers and whatnot, they do their pirouettes, they do their they do their rotations, and it looks so perfect and so coordinated. You try to do that as somebody who is actually a very good maybe athlete in general, but hasn't done that on the regular, you're gonna have a way harder time to control your body. And I think the same can apply to magic here, aside from obviously the magic capacity growing more and more, and obviously the more you have, the more you gotta suppress it, and as such you need more skill to suppress it. And at the same time, it's also just living the thing, right? The more you are used to it, the more it's gonna be your second nature. And even Frieren underestimated Flamme in the beginning, and thought, well, you're weaker than me. But she realized soon enough she's not, and then she wanted to learn from her. Because she loves magic, but also because she despises demon. And this is where the topic comes in that we talked about earlier, that I actually mentioned a couple of episodes ago, where I was like, there has to be some kind of hate in there. Now, obviously, you can say this hate is justified in some, right? In some shape or form. You do have that history of Frieren experiencing all of that, her people being slaughtered and whatnot, and as such, she does have a justifiable level of hate for these creatures. But at the same time, you have to think, right, what message is this gonna send in as a narrative? Because obviously not everybody will look into this very deep, as we discussed in the pre-discussion, and try to see this as an example of you don't trust people too much, but people will look at it and be like, okay, these are demons, they're evil, they're bad, they're monsters, and if somebody is a monster, then there's no empathy you should feel for them, and hate can be justified. These lessons can be learned, right? Obviously you need to ignore certain information, but we already established that a lot of humans do have confirmation bias. And this is how... right, this is how media can perpetuate the wrong message, but obviously we do see that there is at least some level of differentiation in here that kind of characterizes the demons as something inhuman and something that is a different species altogether, which a person that is morally intelligent will pick up on that and will try to at least contextualize that. But yeah. We need to be very careful there, I feel. Training for life, and we do establish the tension. I really love it, right? It's like, Aura basically has her dick out, right? And this is what all demons do, right? They're just letting it hang there. They're just like, here I am, right? This is me. And then somebody steps in and is like, wearing his trousers and being like, and they're making fun of them, and then they need to change, right? They undress and fucking the words are getting caught in their mouth because they were overconfident and they thought, I'm the greatest person out there, right? Or maybe they were overcompensating to begin with and were like, oh yes, I'm so great. But yeah, it's important in a social kind of sense, right? If you're wealthy, if you have status back in the day, if you had status for being born in a noble family, or also if you were a really good warrior, if you were a really good commander, if you were really strong and unbeatable, that establish a certain kind of hierarchy that still is present in some social aspects for us humans, right? People who are very strong are being feared these days, more feared than respect, but also respected in some way from people who achieve to be very strong. But we also do have the same concept in terms of intelligence, right? These days, a lot of our productivity and a lot of the great things we do, we humans do consider very impressive and very awe-inspiring is productivity, art, and genius invention. So if you are a scientist, so if you're very intelligent, if you are very artistically talented or spend a lot of time doing art and are very good at it, you're gonna get respected a lot in today's society. Now, obviously, if you make a lot of money, you're also getting respected, because that also takes a lot of effort. And also, right? Money is your way to get the things you want, for the most part. If you have money, you can buy most things. Maybe not love, maybe not emotions, feelings, closeness, relation, but at least everything else. And as such, it is being respected because money moves mountains. And that is how social hierarchies are built. You have somebody who has extreme amounts of wealth, extreme amounts of skill, strength, intelligence, or charisma, and based on that, people look up to them. They want to be like them. We do have that discussion in it's a very short thing, and I don't want to go into extreme spoiler territory, but we do have that thing in the 1987 Berserk series where it's about like people getting caught in other people's dreams, because those dreams and ambitions are so big and those people are so charismatic that everybody else who had a dream or has a dream is kind of flocking to them, because that passion, that fire attracts them and they want to achieve something great. Because a lot of humans, obviously, in this case probably also a lot of demons, but in completely different ways, have this desire to do something great. And obviously in case of demons, it is defined as something that within demon society is considered impressive, and in a world where might makes right, obviously beating or killing a lot of people, conquering stuff, that is the most impressive stuff that you can bring to the table. And as a basis of that, there's the strength, and demons are very mana affiliates, the only ones better than that supposedly being elves, which they then try to eradicate. And obviously they're gonna let it hang out, and they're gonna just show their mind, because if they make themselves very small, they're seen as very cowardly. We do have that expression in human society as well, that stealth and sneaking and doing something behind other people's back, or using clever tricks to manipulate people, or using people's emotional weaknesses in order to overwhelm or surprise them, is seen as cowardly and malicious, and people look down upon other people who fight dirty, right? The infamous pocket sand, right? That is a trick that is considered in general very dirty, and as such, we did see that later in the discussions. We do have the discussions between mages, where it's like, okay, I am bringing dishonor upon mages and upon myself by being one of the best mages out there, but not showing my mana capacity in any way. But I gladly do that to fulfill this goal that I have, that I strive towards. And Flam does seem to also have some kind of negative, aside, maybe it's just the fact that she noticed a lot of like pain and suffering being caused by demons in general, and that is why she's so hell-bent on defeating the demons. But maybe there's also something personal in there. So yeah, something to think about, but because for Frieren it's obviously personal, and she teaches her all she knows about human society. That's Frieren's first exposure to human society and how she learns, and that is her first connection point. She got taken in, she got taught a lot, and as such she did develop some form of emotions, and this also proves that it's not just that is not just nature but also nurture which defines us, because she might be a lot more emotional than her brethren, than other elves out there. But through growing up with Flum, she learned a lot about humans and human emotions, and got closer to that on a personal level as well. And it also proves that how we grow up and what environments we live in and who we surround ourselves in actively influences our biology even. I mean, we found that out a couple of I think a decade or two ago, that we started to kind of get the picture that even for humans in their lifetime, specific gene expressions, right, can be turned on or off within their body based on what experiences they make, right? A huge trauma or a very significant experience can actually influence how our body functions on a more basic level, even though we so far can't define the exact rules of why it is happening and how it is happening, right? We do not have that causal link, but we do know that it is happening, that within our lives certain genes that we do possess are like only a portion of our genes are actually active and being used in the process of our metabolism and whatnot. And sometimes some genes are just getting turned on or turned off based on what we experience. That can be physical influences as well as mental and social influences. But yeah, Flum is old, and yeah, we do see why and we talked about this earlier, and I think in the comments Vincent also mentioned that she wasn't surprised that Hyter is old. She was more Himmel is old. She was more taken aback. I think she was taken aback by how quickly it happened, because she hadn't seen him in a while. How crass the difference is, right? We do see Hyter aged a little bit less extremely, right? In height as well as like his hair stayed the same mostly, right? His hair didn't turn as white, at least not in the beginning, before we met him already taking care of Fern. But yeah, I guess this was her first experiences spending an entire lifetime with somebody, or a big part of an entire lifetime. And I do think that just based on a single experience, or maybe 1-2 experiences she has also made since then, it's very hard to kind of get a feeling for how it actually is in each and every case. And I do definitely think that with Himmel that was taking her back, because she did kind of maybe expect him to not age as fast, or maybe to look not quite as different as he used to. And yeah, we do see a lot of like very small, I don't want to say smiles, it's not an actual smile, but it's an upward lip, so there is some kind of positivity in there that you can see. It's very faint. But for Frieren, who is not very expressive and keeps a lot of what's going on inside of her very close to the chest, it is obviously a very a very big sign that she is feeling that close connection. And yeah, traveling the world without Flum then, and years later, I don't even know, I don't think it says how many years later, but we've seen that little town was so small, and then years later they encounter each other, and Himmel drops that out of the blue. It's just a feeling. But that's so him, right? That he's almost a very extreme opposite of Frieren. Right? I mean, they both vibe in the sense that Frieren is a very calm being, but calm and emotionally flat, while Himmel is very calm, but calm and emotionally very warm. So in that sense, they have that calm demeanor as a common factor, as a commonality, maybe even a connection point between the two of them. But then they have these differences, which in some cases you might argue is something that draws people towards each other, right? Maybe also Himmel kind of reminded Frieren of Flum in a way. There were maybe some aspects of Himmel, but like that calm demeanor, that self-assured nature, that but also those warm feelings that he always conveys, that kind of reminded her of Flum and kind of drew her towards him as a person, because obviously we did see it. She cried when he was dead, and she was very sad that he died, even if she saw it coming, even if, right? And that didn't just come out of the blue, that was there before that. It's just, I think, oftentimes we don't realize that. We don't consciously do it. And I don't think Frieren consciously did it from the beginning, that she was like, oh, I'm just going to keep everything to myself and not talk to people and don't let on how much I'm actually feeling. I think that's just an MO, right? A modus operandi. It's just how she acts. And then with time, she became more and more aware that how she acts might be kind of incongruent with how she's feeling, and also it might be causing problems when it comes to communication. But she's still keeping up that MO, right? She's still keeping everything close to the chest and being like, oh, whatever. Especially towards Fern and Stark, which I do think she should be opening up more. I mean, I guess I understand the feel. As somebody who has been, who is an introvert, and I'm actually, I don't know, I like to call myself an extrovert, like an extroverted introvert. I'm kind of in the middle, but like my tendency goes more towards introvertedness. And as somebody like that, the main reason why I'm introverted is, I think, that I find it very exhausting and bothersome to deal too much with people on like a daily. Not on a daily. I mean, that's very bad for a therapist to say. I find it very interesting to deal with people, and I find them also. I want to help them, but it's like holding close relations and whatnot. To keep that up 24/7 is very exhausting for me, and I do kind of understand Frieren's feeling of I don't want to explain over and over again to everybody why I'm doing the things I'm doing. That's just too much work for me. But I do think she needs to put in that work, at least to the people that are very close to her. And I think she realized that on some level, but I do think she's still obviously her old self. People don't change overnight, right? It's a slow progression. And then we have, like I said, it's a aura, self-assured, confidence, just being entirely devastated by that one moment, that one reveal. And I do think it's very possible that Frieren even held back here because somebody else could have seen it, right? Maybe she kept that in mind. She was like, okay, I released just enough to overwhelm her, to just make her, right? Make her give up, defeat her. But I'm not gonna release everything, because if a demon sees that and he's like, okay, she's that strong, then they have information about her that they didn't have before. And I think that is something that Flum taught her that she can't do in any way, shape, or form. Right? We're using kind of like the reverse psychology here, that while demons use their mana capacity to demonstrate their strength and avoid having to fight demons constantly, just putting them into submission or putting them down within the hierarchy, within the pack, before even any conflict is happening, Frieren basically lures them in, right, and finds out what are they up to, and then if she has to stop them, or also because of her personal feelings, if she wants to stop them, then she's gonna release all of her might, or at least as much as she needs to defeat them. But she has the upper hand always, right? She has always more cards in her hand. She's always the one who doesn't reveal all of her jokers. And yeah, very good very good cinematography here. I do really like that. Right, it's giant, but we're seeing through it. It's transparent, and that is a good thing, because we still have a sense of the general scene. If that was just a giant, right, like full opaque effect, I don't think it would have the same effect. And we do also show scale, right? We do have these two little figures, and we have this giant aura kind of going on. Very funny aura, by the way. But yeah, again, like with the interesting patterns in the background, right? The lighting, the way the lighting is used, I really love that. But yeah, and that is the conclusion of our episode 10. I don't know if I might do episode 11 right away, but that would probably mean I don't have much of a pre-discussion. Fuck it. I think I'll do it anyway, and then it's gonna go up in a couple of days. Just because the editing takes days, sometimes it also, with the copyright and whatnot. I just recently had, like I said, 3 or even 4 blocked videos, and I'm still dealing with that. That's kind of just really shitty. But yeah, that's it for Frieren. I don't think we talked as much about psychological concepts now in the post discussion, but that's fine. I think it's enough to just understand what's happening and how that affects people on a social level, and how the structures work in the story. We talked a lot about it in the discussion with the comment spotlight. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, I would really like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. I don't have that many subscribers yet, and when I reach a certain threshold, it's gonna be like I'm gonna be able to do more, right? YouTube has this step program where you're like gonna have to reach certain numbers to even be able to do certain things. Other than that, I do have a Patreon. At the moment, there's early access on Made in Abyss. It's 1 week early access, 1 week ahead, and it's gonna come out every Friday so far. Frieren, we are not now almost caught up, which means that probably I'm gonna handle it this way, that I'm gonna record Frieren, and if there's any issues, if I'm gonna record Frieren, I'm gonna edit everything and load it up, and if there's no issues, I'm gonna release it as early access and leave it there for 2 or 3 days, and then make it public, the video, just to kind of cover for maybe possible copyright stuff, because it can come actually after you've uploaded it, which very much a shame, by the way. It's really annoying to have to deal with this stuff if you upload a video and it's actually cleared and YouTube tells you there's no issue, and then you come back 3 or 4 days later and it's like, well, 4 videos have been blocked. Right? Great system. Anyway, we're gonna do some precautions. You've seen it in this video already. I've edited a little bit more. I think I'm keeping a little bit shorter with the reactions, because I do believe that a lot of you are probably here to see me either reacting to the full thing, which means full length, which we do have, or you like to hear me discuss things, which we're gonna do here. Also, let me know. I am probably, not know yet, but I'm probably dropping a musical track under or on my discussion parts to make it just a little bit more chill and nice to talk to people. Obviously, the music choices will maybe not always be a perfect fit for the certain series I'm doing, but I'm trying to keep it in line with what the series is kind of giving me in terms of musical choices and whatnot. Tell me if you like that or not. If you would prefer me to just talk without any background sound, or if you think that's cool. I'm also listening to this in 2x speed sometimes, so if it should be annoying or somehow unfitting at 2x speed, I'm probably gonna notice it, so don't worry about that. With that being out of the way, I think we're ready for episode 11, and I'll see you then in a couple of days, half a week, whatever.